All right, strap in, everybody. We're going full proton pack this time. We're diving deep into
Oh,
Ghostbusters.
yeah.
And you guys have sent in some really cool stuff for this one. We've got a ton of sources about the original film, the one from 1984.
Mhm.
We're going to be looking at the making of the movie, some of the special effects, the marketing, and how it's lasted all these years. And let me tell you, some of this stuff is seriously wild.
You know, what always gets me about Ghostbusters is that it's funny and it's action-packed, but it also makes you think.
Right.
It's pretty awesome that it's still so popular after all these years.
Totally. So we're not going to go through the whole plot again. I mean, you guys are already fans.
Right.
Instead, we're going to go behind the scenes, find out how they made all those cool ghost effects. And we'll also look at what Ghostbusters can teach us about marketing, especially now with all this digital stuff.
Yeah. We're going to look at Ghostbusters from all these different angles. For example, did you know that the Library of Congress chose to preserve this film? And it wasn't just because it was a blockbuster.
Whoa, really? What else made Ghostbusters so important? I mean, like, culturally.
Well, the Library of Congress thought it was a really good snapshot of America in the 1980s. It kind of made fun of how much people were buying the new environmental rules and even how scared everyone was of nuclear weapons. It really captured what it was like to be alive back then, and it did it in a really smart and funny way.
Wow, I never thought about that. So, like, it's a time capsule disguised as a ghost-busting adventure?
Yeah, pretty much. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Before we talk about all the deep stuff, we should probably get back to basics. I mean, you guys know who Venkman, Stantz, Spengler, and Zeddemore are. But what makes these guys different from all those other action heroes?
Yeah, they weren't exactly the toughest guys around, were they?
Nope. Ghostbusters is completely different. These guys are scientists. They're smart and kind of quirky.
Yeah.
And they use their brains and their gadgets to fight ghosts, not just their muscles. It's all about being smart. And that's a great message, especially for a movie genre where usually it's all about muscles and explosions.
So true. And while we're on the topic of brains, what about those special effects? I mean, come on, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man back in 1984, that must have been revolutionary.
Absolutely. It really shows you how creative the special effects team was.
Yeah.
Remember, this was way before CGI. To make it look real, they had to use this thing called blue screen. They had to combine different images together, and they had to be super creative.
And the sources you sent in mentioned that they sometimes only had one shot to get these complicated scenes right.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about pressure.
Can you imagine? You have one chance to get that shot of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man stomping through Times Square.
I know.
And they couldn't just change the New York skyline using a computer.
Right.
They had to plan those shots perfectly by drawing them out beforehand and finding the right locations.
Okay, but how did they make it look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was actually interacting with everything around him? That's what always got me.
Well, they used a few tricks. One was something called forced perspective, where things look closer or farther away than they actually are because of how the camera is angled. And they also used clever camera angles. Like, they'd film the Stay Puft puppet in front of a blue screen, and then they'd carefully place actors in front of it to make it look like they were all in the same scene together.
Yeah, I see.
It's this mix of art and technical skill, and it still looks really good today.
It's amazing how they pulled it off. So we've talked about how smart the Ghostbusters are and how awesome the special effects were. But what about the heart of the movie? What's the message?
Your sources point out how the movie is all about being accepted, even if you're different. The Ghostbusters are made fun of not just by regular people, but also by other scientists.
Yeah.
People think they're crazy because they believe in ghosts and because they use all this weird equipment.
It's like they're going against the grain, which is hard enough, but they're doing it with ghosts.
Exactly. And this idea of challenging what everyone thinks is normal also connects to something really interesting, how they marketed Ghostbusters. Think about it. In 1984, marketing was totally different than it is now.
Oh, totally. There was no social media, no online ads. So how did they make Ghostbusters such a huge hit?
They had to rely on what we call organic reach today, which is basically getting people talking about your movie.
Okay.
They use things like catchy slogans and, of course, that theme song by Ray Parker Jr. that everyone knows.
Oh, man, that song is legendary. I feel like everyone on the planet knows that song.
See? That's the power of a great marketing hook.
Yeah.
But here's something to think about. How would they market Ghostbusters today in the age of Google, Twitter, and LinkedIn?
That's an interesting question. You definitely have to change your approach.
Absolutely. They'd have to use things like paid ads on websites and social media and figure out how to create content that people would want to share. It's a whole different game now.
Okay, so we've covered the brains behind the operation, the message of the film, and even a bit about the marketing magic.
Yeah.
But let's be real, Ghostbusters was a box office smash, and the numbers are still impressive, even by today's standards.
You're telling me Ghostbusters made over $282 million worldwide, and they only spent $30 million making it.
Wow.
That's a crazy good return on their investment.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the money. Ghostbusters got great reviews and was even nominated for 2 Oscars.
Not bad for a movie about catching ghosts, huh?
Not at all. And remember, it wasn't just about awards. Ghostbusters really connected with people on a deeper level. People talked about it, wanted to buy the toys and costumes, and you still hear people quoting it today.
It's definitely earned its spot as one of the best comedies ever, but what about its lasting appeal? What makes it so timeless?
I think it's because it's a mix of funny and scary. It's spooky, but it's also hilarious, and it never takes itself too seriously.
Yeah. Right. It's that perfect blend of thrills and chills that keeps you wanting more. And we can't forget about those unforgettable characters. I mean, who doesn't love a good Slimer chase or a giant marshmallow man wreaking havoc?
Those iconic images and characters are definitely part of why people still love it. But I think it's also about something deeper. It's about that human fascination with the unknown and how we all kind of love to be scared, especially if we can laugh about it later.
You're right. It's like a safe way to face our fears.
Yeah.
So it's more than just a movie. It's a cultural phenomenon. It was technically groundbreaking, and it was a marketing masterpiece all rolled into one. But what about how it's influenced things since then? How has Ghostbusters continued to evolve and shape pop culture?
Well, there were sequels, cartoon shows, comic books, video games. Ghostbusters has definitely left its mark on pop culture.
It's like that proton stream. It just keeps on going.
It does.
But let's talk about the sequels for a moment. There's Ghostbusters the Second, which came out in 1989 and continued the team's adventures. And then there's the 2016 reboot with an all-female cast. The sources you guys sent in mentioned that the reboot caused some pretty heated debates online.
Yeah, some people loved that it was trying to be more progressive and inclusive.
Yeah.
But others thought it wasn't true to the original. It's really interesting how a movie series like Ghostbusters can make people feel so strongly, isn't it?
It really shows how much these characters and stories mean to people, even after all these years. But the Ghostbusters story didn't end there. In 2021, we got Ghostbusters Afterlife. And that one was different. It was a direct sequel to the original movies and introduced a whole new generation to ghostbusting.
Afterlife was really clever. It had that nostalgia factor for the older fans, but
Yeah.
also added new stuff to keep it fresh.
Right.
It worked for both longtime fans and new people just discovering this series.
Yeah.
And it looks like the franchise is still going strong. They've got another sequel, Ghostbusters Firehouse, coming out in 2024.
Wow, they really are keeping this franchise alive. It's awesome to see how Ghostbusters has managed to adapt and change over the years, but it's still got that same core appeal.
That's what happens when you have a really strong original idea. That mix of humor, action, and sci-fi, plus those iconic characters, is a recipe for success, and they keep using it. But we can't forget about the merchandise.
Oh, yeah. The toys.
Huh.
I had a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man stuffed animal when I was a kid. I think I even had a Ghostbusters lunchbox.
That's what your sources are talking about. Ghostbusters isn't just movies, it's a brand. Think about it. Action figures, Lego sets, costumes for Halloween, video games, and they even brought back that Ecto Cooler drink a few years ago. It's a merchandising empire.
It's crazy how Ghostbusters is everywhere. But besides all the toys and sequels, what do you think is the real legacy of Ghostbusters?
I think it changed how people thought about comedy and how movies are made. The way they mix witty dialogue, slapstick humor, and actual scary stuff has inspired so many other creators.
That's so true. You can see the influence of Ghostbusters in so many movies and TV shows that came after it. It really changed the game when it comes to combining comedy with the supernatural.
And it gave us some characters we'll never forget. I
Right.
mean, Peter Venkman is a comedic legend.
Totally. His sarcasm and that I don't care attitude are just as funny today as they were back in 1984. But Ghostbusters also had heart. It wasn't just about the laughs, it was about friendship, working together, and facing your fears no matter how weird or creepy they are.
Exactly. I think that's a big part of why people of all ages still connect with it. It's a movie that reminds us it's okay to be a little different, to be open to new experiences, and to never give up, even if you're facing a giant marshmallow man.
Okay, so we've established that Ghostbusters is way more than just a movie. It's a cultural phenomenon, a technical marvel, and a marketing success story all in one. But what about its staying power? What makes it so enduring?
Well, one of the things that keeps Ghostbusters fresh is its blend of humor and genuinely spooky moments. It's scary, but it's also hilarious, and it never takes itself too seriously.
Right, it's that perfect balance of thrills and laugh that keeps you coming back for more. But let's not forget about those memorable characters. I mean, who doesn't love a good Slimer chase or a giant marshmallow man wreaking havoc?
Those iconic images and characters are definitely part of Ghostbusters' lasting appeal. But I think it also goes deeper than that. Ghostbusters taps into something universal. Our fascination with the unknown, our fear of the things that go bump in the night, and ultimately, our desire to find a way to laugh in the face of danger.
That's a great point. So we've established that Ghostbusters is more than just a movie. It's a cultural phenomenon, a technical marvel, and a marketing success story all rolled into one. But what about its legacy? How has Ghostbusters continued to evolve and influence pop culture?
We've got sequels, animated series, comic books, video games. Ghostbusters has definitely left its mark on pop culture.
It's like that proton stream, it just keeps on going. But let's focus on those sequels for a moment. You've got Ghostbusters the Second in 1989, which continued the team's adventures, and then there's the 2016 reboot with an all-female cast. Your sources mention that the reboot sparked some pretty heated debates online.
Yes, some fans saw it as a progressive step forward, while others felt it strayed too far from the original. It's fascinating how a beloved franchise like Ghostbusters can evoke such strong emotions, isn't it?
It really shows you how deeply these characters and stories have resonated with people over the years. But the Ghostbuster story didn't end there. In 2021, we got Ghostbusters Afterlife, which took a different approach, serving as a direct sequel to the original films and introducing a new generation to the world of ghostbusting.
Afterlife cleverly blended nostalgia with fresh elements, appealing to both longtime fans and newcomers. And it looks like the franchise is still going strong with another sequel, Ghostbusters Firehouse, slated for release in 2024.
Wow, they really are keeping this franchise alive and kicking. It's amazing to see how Ghostbusters has managed to adapt and evolve over the decades while still retaining its core appeal.
It speaks to the strength of the original concept. That blend of humor, action, and sci-fi, combined with those iconic characters, has proven to be a winning formula time and time again. But let's not forget about the merchandise.
Oh, yes, the merchandise. I remember having a Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man plush toy as a kid. I think I even had a Ghostbusters lunchbox.
Your sources actually touch upon this. Ghostbusters isn't just a film franchise, it's a brand. Think about it, action figures, Lego sets, Halloween costumes, video games, even that iconic Ecto-Cooler drink that made a comeback a few years ago, it's a merchandising empire.
It's incredible how Ghostbusters has managed to infiltrate every corner of our lives. But beyond the merchandise and the sequels, what do you think is the true legacy of Ghostbusters?
I think its legacy lies in its influence on comedy and filmmaking. The blend of witty dialogue, slapstick humor, and genuine scares has inspired countless creators over the years.
It's true. You can see echoes of Ghostbusters in so many films and TV shows that came after it. It really set a new standard for blending comedy with the supernatural.
And it also gave us some truly unforgettable characters. I mean, Peter Venkman alone is a comedic icon.
Absolutely. His sarcastic wit and that devil-may-care attitude are just as funny today as they were back in 1984. But Ghostbusters also had heart. It wasn't just about the laughs, it was about friendship, teamwork, and ultimately facing your fears, no matter how strange or slimy they might be.
That's a great point. And I think that's one of the reasons why Ghostbusters continues to resonate with audiences of all ages.
Yeah.
It's a film that reminds us that it's okay to be a little weird, to embrace the unexpected, and to never give up, even when you're facing down a giant marshmallow man.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from the technical wizardry behind those special effects to the cultural impact and the enduring legacy of the franchise. But remember, you provided us with some interesting sources on Ghostbusters and its connection to marketing. We touched on it briefly earlier, but let's delve a little deeper.
You got it. If we shift our focus to the business side of things, Ghostbusters offers some surprisingly relevant lessons, even in today's digital age.
Now that's what I call a deep dive.
Think about it. The Ghostbusters were essentially entrepreneurs. They had a service to offer, a brand to build, and a market to tap into. And they did it all with style and a healthy dose of humor.
That's right. They had to figure out how to get the word out, how to convince people that their services were essential, and how to manage customer relations, all while dealing with some pretty unusual challenges.
Exactly. Now imagine you're running a business today. You've got a website, social media channels, email marketing campaigns. The landscape has changed dramatically since 1984.
Oh, yeah, it's a whole new world out there. So, what can Ghostbusters teach us about navigating this digital marketing landscape?
Well, for starters, the Ghostbusters were adaptable. They had to constantly adjust their strategies based on the type of ghost they were facing. Today's marketers need that same agility.
You mean being able to switch gears, try new things, and not be afraid to experiment?
Exactly. The digital marketing landscape is constantly evolving. What worked yesterday might not work today. You have to be willing to learn, adapt, and embrace new technologies.
So, it's like upgrading your proton pack to keep up with the latest ghost-busting tech.
That's a great analogy. Another key takeaway from Ghostbusters is the importance of storytelling. They didn't just offer a service, they created a narrative, a brand identity that resonated with people.
You mean like how they made ghost catching seem cool and exciting, almost like an adventure?
Precisely. They created a world that people wanted to be a part of, and that's something that businesses today can learn from. It's not just about selling a product or service, it's about telling a story that connects with your audience on an emotional level.
So we've talked about adaptability and storytelling, but what about the more tactical aspects of marketing? What can Ghostbusters teach us about things like advertising and reaching our target audience?
Well, remember, the Ghostbusters had that iconic theme song, catchy taglines, and a memorable logo. These elements were crucial for building brand recognition and generating buzz back in 1984. Today, those principles still apply, but the tools and platforms have evolved.
So instead of catchy jingles on the radio, we've got targeted ads on social media and search engines.
Exactly. You've got to think about things like search engine optimization, SEO, pay-per-click advertising, PPC, and content marketing strategies to reach your audience where they're spending their time online.
It sounds like there's a lot to consider.
There is, but that's where the fun comes in. It's like solving a puzzle, figuring out how to connect with the right people at the right time with the right message.
It's almost like you're a Ghostbuster yourself, tracking down those elusive customers.
Huh. I like that. And just like the Ghostbusters relied on their trusty PKE meter to detect paranormal activity, today's marketers have a whole arsenal of tools and analytics at their disposal to measure the effectiveness of their campaigns and make data-driven decisions.
So we've got to be data-driven Ghostbusters, constantly analyzing and adapting our strategies to make sure we're hitting our targets.
Precisely. But remember, it's not just about the numbers. At the heart of any successful marketing campaign is a genuine understanding of your audience and their needs.
You mean like how the Ghostbusters knew that New Yorkers were terrified of ghosts and needed someone to protect them?
Exactly. They tapped into a real fear and offered a solution. Today, it's about understanding your target audience's pain points, aspirations, and motivations.
And then crafting a message that resonates with them, just like the Ghostbusters did with their Who You Gonna Call.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's not forget about another key element of the Ghostbusters' success, their ability to build a community.
You mean like how they had a loyal following of fans who loved their work and even wanted to join their team?
Exactly. Today, building a community can be even more powerful thanks to social media and online forums.
So it's about creating a space where your audience can connect with each other, share their experiences, and feel like they're part of something bigger.
Precisely. It's about fostering those relationships and turning customers into brand advocates, just like the Ghostbusters did with their enthusiastic fan base.
Wow, this is making me rethink my whole approach to marketing. Who knew that a movie about busting ghosts could be so insightful?
That's the beauty of deep dives like this. You never know where the insights will come from.
Okay, so we've covered the technical brilliance of Ghostbusters, its cultural impact, its enduring legacy, and even its surprising relevance to the world of marketing.
We've gone from proton packs to PKE meters to PPC campaigns. I'd say that's a pretty comprehensive deep dive.
But before we wrap things up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the idea that Ghostbusters tapped into a universal fear of the unknown. Do you think that's part of the reason why it's still so popular today?
I think it plays a big role. We're all fascinated by the things we can't explain, the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding.
And Ghostbusters gives us a way to explore those fears in a safe and entertaining way.
Exactly. It allows us to confront those fears with a mix of humor and action, and ultimately to emerge feeling empowered. Like we can handle anything that comes our way, whether it's a supernatural entity or just a challenging day at the office.
I love that. So as we prepare to cross back over into the realm of the living, so to speak, is there one final takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with? something to ponder as they continue their own explorations of the Ghostbusters universe.
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Ghostbusters is more than just a movie. It's a reminder that it's okay to be different, to embrace your quirks, and to never be afraid to challenge the status quo. And who knows, maybe along the way, you'll even bust a few ghosts of your own.
That's perfect. And on that note, I think it's time for us to pack up our proton packs and bid farewell to the world of spectral shenanigans. As we've been talking about Ghostbusters, I can't help but think about how groundbreaking those special effects were for their time. We talked about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but there were so many other amazing creatures and visuals.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to keep in mind, this was 1984, long before CGI became the go-to for everything in movies.
Right.
They used a whole mix of techniques, practical effects, stop motion, puppets, even those elaborate matte paintings to bring those iconic ghosts to life.
Slimer, that mischievous little blob of ectoplasm. It's incredible how much personality they squeezed into a creature that's basically just green goo.
A lot of that came down to puppetry and stop-motion animation, which was insanely time-consuming and detail-oriented work.
Right.
They actually had to create a bunch of different versions of Slimer, each with slightly different facial expressions, and then animate them one frame at a time.
Wow. It's amazing they had the patience for that. And those terror dogs, the ones guarding the temple in Dana Barrett's apartment building, those were terrifyingly real.
Oh, yeah. They used a mix of puppetry and animatronics for those. They actually built full-size terror dogs with moving parts and these really expressive faces. It was a pretty impressive combination of engineering and artistic skill.
The level of detail and craftsmanship in those effects is mind-blowing. They were really pushing the limits of what was possible back then.
It's funny. There's a kind of parallel between those early visual effects pioneers and the digital marketers we have today.
How so?
Well, they both have to be creative, innovative, and always willing to try new things to achieve what they want.
I see what you mean. Just like those filmmakers had to push the boundaries of what they could create visually, marketers now have to adapt to the ever-changing world of digital media.
Right.
We're always searching for ways to grab people's attention, tell stories, and connect with audiences who are constantly being flooded with messages.
It's a never-ending cycle of adapting and coming up with new ideas. It's just like the Ghostbusters always messing with their proton packs to make them work better.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Back in their day, marketing was all about billboards, TV commercials, and magazine ads. But now it's a whole different world.
Oh, yeah, totally different. Now we've got social media, optimizing for search engines, content marketing, influencers, and who knows what else. It's like the marketing toolkit just exploded overnight.
But here's the thing. The core principles haven't really changed. It's still about understanding your audience, coming up with a message that resonates, and getting that message out there in a way that sticks. Whether you're creating a visual effect that makes people's jaws drop, or a marketing campaign that goes viral, it's about sparking people's imaginations.
That's such a good point. So even though the tools have changed drastically, the heart of marketing, that emotional connection with your audience, remains the same.
Absolutely. Just like Ghostbusters blended humor, action, and incredible special effects to create this unforgettable experience, the most successful marketing campaigns now use a variety of strategies, a sort of multi-pronged approach.
It's all about being creative, being able to adapt, and being willing to experiment. Just like those filmmakers who figured out how to bring those ghosts to life all those years ago. Speaking of being creative, do you remember that question we posed to everyone earlier? If you were starting a ghost-catching business today, how would you market it in this digital age?
Oh, yeah. What a fun thought experiment. Would you focus on those targeted ads on social media? Or maybe you'd build a creepy website? Or even launch one of those viral TikTok challenges using the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
I love those ideas. A strong social media presence would be crucial. And maybe you could even do some augmented reality stuff where people can interact with virtual ghosts.
Oh, that's cool. Imagine people using their phones to scan their surroundings and suddenly there's a ghost popping up in their living room or on their street. That would definitely get people talking.
And what about influencer marketing? Think about how powerful it would be to get some popular YouTubers or TikTok stars to try out your ghost-catching gear and share their experiences with millions of people online.
That's genius. It's all about finding those clever ways to tap into existing online communities and then leveraging those networks to get your brand out there.
Well, it looks like our Ghostbusters deep dive has turned up some pretty valuable gems. We've uncovered not only the creative genius behind the film, but also its surprising relevance to the world of marketing.
It's been a wild ride. We've gone from proton packs and PKE meters to PPC campaigns and SEO strategies.
It's been an adventure. So what's your main takeaway? What do you hope our listeners will remember from all of this?
More than anything, I hope they remember that Ghostbusters is much more than just a fun movie that takes us back to our childhoods. It's a story about innovation, creativity, and the importance of human connection. And whether you're up against an actual ghost or just facing a tough day at work, remember what we've talked about today. Embrace what makes you unique, don't be afraid to step outside the box, and never underestimate the power of a good laugh.
Perfectly said. So until next time, everyone, remember, if there's something strange in your neighborhood,
Who are you going to call?
that's right, Ghostbusters. And if you find yourself needing a little guidance in the ever-changing world of marketing, remember what the Ghostbusters taught us. Be adaptable, tell a story that people connect with, and never be afraid to break those conventional boundaries. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.